Welcome back to this special programme, looking back at the recent highlights of frost over the world in the past 6 months. In April, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown hosted the G20 summit in London, where he welcomed the world's most powerful leaders. Though the world economy was the focus, there was also much talk about the future of nuclear weapons.
What President Obama is saying is what I believe, that if we are to persuade countries like Iran, like Korea, but right round the Arab world not to proliferate nuclear weapons, then we have got to make an initiative, one, to offer civil nuclear power, and two, to be prepared to reduce our own nuclear weapons. Now, you probably know better than I the Non-Proliferation Treaty, because it was one of the great advances of the time, but the bargain in that treaty was that other countries would not adopt nuclear weapons in return for the holders of nuclear weapons reducing the nuclear arsenals. And I think what President Obama is saying is what really I'm saying here. If we can offer non-proliferators access to civil nuclear power, make the conditions in which it's available to them secure, of course, but in return for them not adopting nuclear weapons, then if we also at the same time reduced our nuclear weapons, we'd show that we were honouring the spirit of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
President Obama must have been rather disappointed with the turnout by NATO in terms of troops on a long or middle-term basis. NATO didn't really come up to the right figure, did it?
Well, there's got to be burden sharing, and that's got to increase over time. But there are 42 countries signed up to this coalition. But I think the American government were able to announce, as a result of our discussions, 5,000 more troops were going in for the election period. Europe offered more than people expected. And I think the policing, the training mission for troops, the civilian support for the future are all also important, because you've got to understand, I think, that the Afghan strategy has changed. We've got to complement the military work that we're doing, and I do praise the dedication and professionalism of our troops. All these things are essential for the reconstruction of Afghanistan and for Afghanistan being free of the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda influences.
A NATO summit, which immediately followed the G20, picked up on those concerns about nuclear weapons falling into the hands of extremists, and more widely about NATO's commitment in Pakistan and Afghanistan. NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Europe had this to say about that.
The threat to the environment that we are focusing on is varied. It is Taliban insurgents, but also in the east, it's a syndicated insurgency. It's Haqqani, Al-Qaeda is resident there. So I think we take those aspects, that particular threat variety, into account in the NATO perspective.
And in terms of looking at it as NATO, I mean, do you think that we've seen how Taliban can appear defeated and bounce back again to be a factor again? Can the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, in your opinion, at NATO, be defeated, or will they always bounce back?
Insurgencies are difficult to be defeated. It's a war of ideas. I think you need to take away from them their enablers, such as financing, such as safe havens in Pakistan in the border area, the sanctuary. That's what we have to do, and then separate them from the people. If they don't have the support of the people, they will rapidly fail.
General John Craddock there. Of course, the forces of extremism in Afghanistan and Pakistan today were faced on a daily basis in Pakistan during the presidency of Pervez Musharraf. We spoke about those threats and much more besides when he came to the studio here for a rare and exclusive interview. What are your emotions as you see the situation now?
Very sad. I feel sad and despondent at whatever is happening because Pakistan is suffering.
Despondent and sad, yes. And do you think, with all the list of problems that there are at the moment, and food shortages and power shortages and turmoil with, and indeed the insurgents and the rise of extremism and all of these things in the economy, do you think if you'd still been there that you could have dealt with some of those successfully, or is it just an insoluble problem?
No, not at all. I think my experience of 9 years shows that the nation has a great potential and it has all the resources. It also has the acumen. The people are intelligent to understand what the problems are and resolving them. So it's not the problem of lack of understanding, of lack of resources or lack of potential. The people, unfortunately, the people have to have confidence in the government, and if that happens, I think the situation is recoverable.
When it came time for you to step down, how difficult a decision was that to take, or was it just obvious that you'd had several years of the economy going well and things like that, but now your time had come, as it were?
Yes.
How difficult was it to decide that?
I mean, very honestly speaking, the difficulty was not from my personal point of view. I don't have an ego, I don't have any lust for any riches and all that, that I must remain in position and perpetuate myself permanently. That was not the case. So it was easy for me personally. But I knew that it will lead to tremendous amount of turmoil. That was the difficulty. The difficulty was from Pakistan's point of view. So finally, but when I saw that it's inevitable and that even if I stay on, I'll be some kind of an impotent president, what is the point in staying? I'm not the kind of person who sits around uselessly. I can't be a useless man. So therefore, I took the decision, and I think I was right in my judgment of what will happen to Pakistan.
From the previous president of Pakistan to the present president of Pakistan. This was my first interview with Asif Ali Zardari since he became the country's president. He never travels without a picture of Benazir Bhutto, his late wife, and Pakistan's former Prime Minister, who was, of course, assassinated during an election rally at the end of 2007. It's so good to see you again.
So good to see you.
And you, behind you, the flag and that beautiful, beautiful photograph of Benazir.
Yes.
Is that one of your favourites?
It is one of my favorite.
And she made the supreme sacrifice, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
She knew that, though.
She knew that, and she spoke about it all the time. You know that, and I know that she had this thought in the back of her mind that they will assassinate me.
You said there was always that, there was a sadness in her eyes on occasion, yes?
Yeah. I was just telling another gentleman that all her life, when I lived with her, I could not bring it up to me that please try and lay down your, you're supposed to bury your dead and forget about it. Because she didn't get a chance to bury her father. That pain she always carried. But then she converted that pain into strength. This is something I learned after I lost her. I didn't know there was a strength in pain. I had no idea that you could use the pain, the force of pain, and convert it into an energy to fight.
And you must miss her every day.
Every moment, every second.
Another politician who lived under the threat of violence in troubled times was F.W. de Klerk, who freed Nelson Mandela and played an indispensable part in ending apartheid during his time as South Africa's last white president. Before you actually made the historic speech and so on, in which you announced that Nelson Mandela was to be released, had you met him before that or only afterwards?
I met him only once before that. He was brought to my office, which later became his office, in December '89. I already then, and my cabinet, have already decided, in principle, he must be released. We didn't discuss it with him that evening. We had a one-on-one between him and me. We avoided to discuss issues, current issues, and we just sized each other up. It was just to get a feel. And both of us later wrote in our respective autobiographies. We could report back to our constituencies, I think I can do business with that man. The next time he was brought to my office was shortly after my speech of the 2nd of February, when I announced to him he would be released on the 11th of February. And his immediate reaction was, no, it's too soon. And I said, Mr. Mandela, why is it too soon? He said, no, we need more time to prepare. And I remember that established also a relationship between us where humor had a place. To say, Mr. Mandela, you've been in jail long enough. You will be released on the 11th. We will later negotiate about many other things, but this is not negotiable. Now let's negotiate about what time of the day and from which place are you going to be released. He laughed and he accepted. And shortly after his release, of course, we started to structure a negotiation forum. In April 1990, there was a meeting of a delegation from our side, the government, and from the ANC side. There was a broad agreement on the way forward with regard to negotiation. And then the ANC came. Before the next meeting, which took place in August 1990, the ANC took an initiative which I regarded as the equivalent of the initiative which I took on the 2nd of February. And they unilaterally announced they are suspending the armed struggle. And those two initiatives really set up the platform for meaningful and successful negotiation.
F.W. de Klerk there and his insights into that extraordinary relationship with Nelson Mandela. After the break, Saeed Erekat, Tony Blair, and a headline-grabbing interview with Morgan Tsvangirai. Don't go away.